la présidente de l'Union panafricaine de la jeunesse, qui, comme vous le savez, depuis 2014, travaille à mettre la jeunesse africaine au cœur des dispositifs décisionnels du continent. À son actif, je note entre autres la mise en place d'un fonds de développement de la jeunesse en partenariat avec la Commission de l'Union africaine. À présent, Mme Francine Furaha, vous avez la parole.
Tété, Antonio, pour l'invitation et aussi l'initiative d'organiser ce forum si important qui parle de la jeunesse africaine ici aux Nations Unies. The 2017 African Union theme of the year, harnessing the demographic dividend through investment in youth, proves that African leaders have understood the need to put youth at the center of development, which requires to be followed with tangible actions. African youth constitute more than 60% of the continent's demography. In most of the African countries, the youth are not adequately represented in the economic, political, and social spheres. Africa has been regarded as the second fastest growing continent in the world, with likelihood of prosperity in the future if the resources are well managed. Every year for the next decade, 11 million youth are expected to enter Africa's labor market, making Africa to have the biggest labor force in the world because of a rising number of youth. This important factor must be taken into account in any genuine social, political, and economic development policy, in particular to promote social progress, reduce political tensions, and maximize economic performance. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the African population is quite youthful and offers a huge labor force as a driving factor in realizing the dream of the African Renaissance. The innovation and youth business enterprises in the continent has created a new breed of leaders, and this inspires a lot of confidence. As we march forward to a bright and sustainable future, the biggest task remains is the management of the dividend to ensure that it becomes more effective and benefit the small-scale and medium enterprise African youth right at the farthest villages on skills remittances gathered from the African youth in the diaspora so as to bring the skills back to Africa for the benefit of the continent. The pace, intensity, and extent of development in Africa depends on how well preserved, mobilized, and used youth are. Currently, young people make 45% of continent's total labor force. Hence, the need to take this demographic factor into account in Africa's development efforts. The development of Africa, as much as political stability, social consolidation, and economic prosperity, require the development of youth capacities. Young people are more creative, I hope you can agree with me, and innovative than the elder generation. In many areas such as community development, peace building, information technology, and HIV/AIDS awareness, young people are already playing a catalytic role in Africa's development. In recent decades, African governments have become increasingly aware of the importance of youth in development strategies. Thus, the African Union, AU, has reinforced its commitment to young people with the adoption of this theme for this year, with the help of partners such as the UNFPA. It is committed to promote and investing for the well-being of young Africans through their full and effective participation in the development process of societies, recognizing the place of young people as a factor in the active exercise of citizenship. We continue to encourage the creation of the African Youth Development Fund and urge African leaders to not deny African youth this opportunity that will promote youth entrepreneurship as vital to job creation. This initiative is already adopted by the African Union Executive Council and only left with heads of state's decision. I therefore use this opportunity to recommend to His Excellency Marshal de Paul Ikunga, African Union HRST Commissioner, here present, and other partners, including the UN agencies, to make sure that the coming African Union Heads of State Summit agenda is getting around the world, which should not only be limited to the AU 2017 theme of the year, but beyond 2017 in order to improve the lives of African youth, which is characterized by the high level of unemployment rate in the world, with 60% of youth representing unemployed Africans. We are also pleased to announce here that several African Union member states have been able to create the National Youth Fund, such as Kenya, Namibia, Senegal, and many more, where we were invited and witnessed youth getting financial support for their businesses or startup capital. It is completely impossible to enable youth economic participation without enabling youth access to finance. Countries investing in youth creates less trouble and provides sustainable peace. Apart from youth economic participation, Africa will have to improve youth political participation. Means youth participation in decision-making at all levels. Countries like Tanzania have more youth in parliament. True, though in the entire continent, we have few young ministers and heads of state, like France has done it in electing President Emmanuel Macron. Following the African Union Commission elections in January this year at the African Union, Central African region was not elected because it had not female candidates. This should perhaps be considered for youth as well, at least to have 2 African Union commissioners under the age of 35 years old, to practically do it instead of just saying youth participation. I therefore call on African leaders to give the remaining commissioners' positions, at least 10%, to young, experienced Africans. With the 2 political youth economic and political strategies, then we can conclude that African leaders have given the theme to the youth, and it's really benefiting the youth of the continent. We will need, ladies and gentlemen, to improve youth participation in conflict prevention, mediation, and resolution, as recommended by the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250 on youth, peace, and security. There is a high need to support youth dialogues in conflict and post-conflict countries such as in Somalia, in DRC, Central African Republic, in Burundi, Rwanda, South Sudan, Libya, and many more. We have visited some of these countries and met even the most vulnerable youth, hence we use this platform to urge the world to support the UNHCR and other UN agencies to provide youth in IDPs and refugee camps access to education as they only hope for their future. I also make reference of thousands of Central African Republic and South Sudan young refugees, as we recently met the UNHCR in DRC prior to the upcoming Refugee Day on the 20th of June. We can deny all to a young generation, but not education. I am coming from a very disadvantaged community and once lived in a very remote area, but education has made it possible for me to be here today addressing the world. Africa needs to invest in quality education in order to enable youth acquire skills for their country's development. The Africa we want under Aspiration 6 of the African Union Agenda 2063 is an Africa whose development is people's driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially its women and youth, in caring for children. The implementation of the SDGs will have a significant impact on African countries, including the young people, as a driving force in the development agenda, to create a globally competitive and prosperous nations with a high quality of life by 2030. That aims to transform African states into a newly industrializing middle-income country. The implementation of SDGs by African countries through national development programs will progressively facilitate the achievement of the goals and aspirations and the overarching goal of a prosperous and global competitive countries where citizens enjoy a high quality life. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, remember that we are no longer debating the legitimacy of engaging the African youth wherever they are, the continent level or at the world level. Nor are we justifying the participation of youth in the region. Those debates were done by the last generation. Our generation is called upon to translate ideas into actions. Use the youth for economic growth, use the youth for peace and security, use the youth for sustainable development. I thank you and God bless Africa.